Welcome to the Zoom grind. Steal, open raise. Here we fold for sure. Against the sizing it's very easy, but it actually is one of the tricky spots if they bet small here out of position and you have this kind of second pair on an ace-high board. It gets really awkward really quickly, but in that spot if you just bounce it like that, it's pretty easy to fold. I was hesitating to fold there because the table seemed soft, but it wasn't soft enough. This 3-bet is not necessary. And this is why. This is a potential 5-bet bluff here, but obviously in the micro stakes you don't need to have 5-bet bluffs in MP versus UTG. If you have no information on the guy, you're just gonna burn money. You could potentially c-bet here just to make him fold random overcards, but I don't think it happens often enough on this board, so I didn't do it. Now we could bet. Let's do a small bet. Because if he folds anything to that small bet, it's very good for me. But I guess he has something. We're deep here, so we would definitely want to play. We're still deep, I'm gonna call. That's a pretty good flop. I'm gonna be checking back. This is awkward. But I think I break even on my call. That looks a lot like kings or aces. And we bink a very good card, because on this card it's actually I think likely that he will call off a jam with worse hands. And if he has a better hand, it's just a cooler. In my eyes, at least. I'm gonna be block betting the river. Oh, what? What? Wow. Wow, guys. What the fuck, man? Whew. That is so unexpected. Jesus. Man, I was scared of him folding aces. Then he calls ace king high to a river jam for 300, for like nearly 200 big blinds. Wow, that's crazy aggressive. What is he thinking here? Like, does he put me on queen 10, king queen of diamonds, something like that? But even, I mean, he doesn't really block it anyway. It's, wow, it's just so insane. Yeah, and that's why you play, this is why you want to play deep in position. You never want to play deep out of position. Like, if you, and I mean, this is something we could be talking about on this episode. I see this over and over again, that people, the argument that they loosen up their ranges is that, oh yeah, we are deep stacked. But something that people always forget is that, yes, you should loosen up your ranges if you're deep stacked, but only if you have position. If you play out of position, you actually want to play tighter the deeper you play. That's a concept that people will probably always misunderstand and misapply, so that's something that is super important to be aware of. That if you play deep, you loosen up in position and you tighten up than what you would play for 100 big blinds out of position. And if you just follow that mantra and just play your standard post-flop game, your deep stack game will automatically improve drastically. I'm gonna promise you that. So if you're deep stacked, I mean, simple examples of things you should be doing if you're deep stacked. So like this guy, for example, right? He opens, I 3-bet. He should be overfolding massively. He should be folding hands that most people, like what most people do is they open, I 3-bet, and then they see, oh, we're deep stacked, so I'm gonna call 6-7 suited out of position to the 3-bet. But what you should do instead is just to, if you usually call, let's say 10-9 suited plus or queen-jack suited plus or something like that, you play tighter than that. Okay, you actually start folding the hands that you would usually call because you don't want to play deep stacked out of position. That's such an important concept. It becomes different once you start assuming that the guy who's 3-betting you is playing very high VPIP, very loose 3-betting ranges, and is also loose passive post-flop. Then it changes again. Then you should actually start playing looser than what you usually play. But because that's usually not the case, you should actually play tighter out of position. And if it's the other way around though, so let's say you open a button and big blind 3-bets. Now your continuing range is probably all suited connectors, stuff like that, suited broadways, etc. Now what you want to do is you start calling, like if you get 150 big blinds deeper or deeper even, you always want to call every suited gapper as well, like 5-7 suited, 4-6 suited, etc. Because they drastically increase in not only their playability but also their inherent value because of how disguised the 2-pair straights and trips, etc. are that you are going to be making in a deep stack pot. But the only reason that value increases is that you have position, so you ultimately have the pot control in your hands. Whereas whenever you play out of position deep stacked, yeah, even if you have a 6-high flush, you never know exactly how to play it without turning your hand face upright, and it's much easier to do out of position. So yeah, I think that's one of the most misunderstood concepts in poker that you regularly see everywhere. And you even see it with very good players where you don't expect them to think this way, but it's not that they always think that way, it's just that sometimes you don't pay attention and you just fall back into old habits, right? And that happens to everyone all the time. It's hard to always play very like your very best game. It's really hard to do, especially if you play long hours and a lot of volume. But simple stuff like that, if you just keep track of it, if you focus on the very basic important stuff, and yeah, just not playing deep stacked out of position is, or if you play out of position deep stacked, you want to make sure you have a very strong range. Stuff like that it's important, and it's also a spot where I would not recommend to care about being exploited, because being exploited pre-flop deep stacked, sure, he always picks up that small pot, you fold so much to 3-bets out of position because you're deep, etc. That's fine though, because once you do get your super strong hand, you're gonna get your value, because you get with a very strong range post-flop deep stacked against someone who thinks he's exploiting you. If they then continue that, oh, I'm gonna exploit this guy post, and they're gonna make really big mistakes against your range where they should actually start just like to actually exploit you, they should 3-bet a lot pre, but then they should check and give up the flop a lot, because if you do fold too much to 3-bets, it means your post-flop range is too strong to continue, right? But they usually then just play their normal post-flop game, which then becomes very minus EV against your overly strong range, and yeah, just let them exploit you in the small pots, but make sure that when you hit the big ones, that you actually are ahead, you know? There's a lot of things that I haven't mentioned that are also important, but most of them you automatically account for by just playing tighter whenever you face a 3-bet or an open raise and you are out of position deep stack. That's not something too hard to pay attention to, right? So here we played bet flop, check call turn. If he bets river, we fold. It's really no rocket science here why we should fold. Even if he checks, I'm gonna lose a lot on this river, because his ace 10 improved, his queen 10, and he has a lot of ace queen, which he had now already, that would just check back there, as you saw. And I think the reason he tanked was he wasn't sure if he should bet or check. If he 3-bets, we have the same hand. 100% of the time, I think. Something interesting to note here in the ace-jack hand too. Oh, we can't replay it. Never mind. But there was a little sizing tell that my opponent did on the turn, where I actually thought about overfolding already. But because I didn't block a spade, I still called. Like, I didn't block a spade or a heart, so I thought, okay, maybe he's just betting too large with his bluffs there. So it was basically a spot where I had to decide, do I think he bets that large with a flush draw? If the question is yes, then ace-jack is never a fold. If I say no, then ace-jack is always a fold. Did I say if he has bluffs, it's always a call? Never mind. I think you know what I mean already anyway. And if not, doesn't matter. It's a pretty rare spot that happens. Usually you don't have a lot of information. Okay, this flop is a raise if he c-bets. No matter, even if he overbets I would raise, because this flop is just terrible. Like, terrible in the sense of I just don't get value on the turns by calling. But he can totally spaz off his stack on the flop with hands that make no sense, but whatever. Okay, we get action now. It's probably stacking him here. I hope so. But he plays... okay, so... on this flop it makes no sense to play bet call flop and then check fold on a brick like a 10. It makes no sense. He should very rarely have a hand that folds there to my bet on a 10. But he did it anyway. And it's probably something like pocket jacks maybe. Or maybe a weak draw. But weak draws should just fold to the flop raise already, because he's out of position. But yeah, you will see those tendencies with pretty much all players. I probably have them too, where you fold too much on one street and then on the next street you don't fold anything, or you don't fold the flop ever, but you fold the turn a lot or something like that. And I think the most common tendency is that people overfold flops, don't like folding turns, and then overfold rivers again. I think that's something you see, at least when I do my database analysis, that's what I usually see in most players. You rarely see someone, actually, I mean, I would even argue you don't see anyone these days who's not folding too much on all streets, like who is calling so much that you should never bluff him. It's really hard to find. Because even what we call fish these days are not really fish if you look at the statistics. They love folding. It's just that they play such wide ranges that even though they love folding, their calls are still stupid hands. But their folding range are just even more stupid hands than what they call. And that's why they are fish. But it's kinda crazy once you look at the statistics that sometimes you have players where you play against them, you have thousands of hands on them, and your opinion of them is that they are just calling down shit hands all the time. And then you look at their statistics and it actually says that they're just folding too much on like basically every street, and you wonder what the hell, man. But then you look at his VPIP and his VPIP says 45, and that explains everything. It just means that his folding range is even worse than what the shit he's bluff catching with all the time. And pocket fives will be our last hand here. And we flop a set. Let's go. Okay, so this board, I don't think he has a check raise range, so I'm gonna bet large. And we get fold. Yeah, leave a like or dislike. See ya in the next episodes. Bye bye.